this in mind. But yeah, Matthew and Lucy, do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Sure, we actually have that in our slides, but I mean we can do a sort of double introduction. Or actually, why don't I make sure that I can screen share, because let me just get that going.
Yeah, I guess while he does that, I can just introduce myself. So I'm Lucy. I'm currently a senior at Cornell, and I'm an iOS developer as well as a course instructor on AppDev.
All right, can everyone see the slides? Is that good? Okay, sweet. All right, so yeah, welcome to the iOS workshop for HackOurCampus. The general structure of today is just going to be a quick introduction about who we are as people and also as an organization, and then we'll dive into our live demo with Xcode to build a functional app, and then we'll finish off by just talking why iOS development, what makes it meaningful to us. Yeah, so my name is Mathew Sculin. I'm a junior studying computer science in the College of Engineering. I'll be a co-instructor with Lucy in the fall for iOS development, and I'm a pod lead for CourseGrab. In past semesters, I've worked on as an iOS developer on Polo.
Yeah, so earlier, but I'm Lucy, senior at Cornell, studying CS, also in engineering. So this semester, I will be instructing the iOS course with Mathew. I'm also an iOS developer on Pair, and I've been on AppDev for a year and a half now. So previously, I was an iOS developer on Ithaca Transit and also on Polo.
All right, so what's AppDev? We're a team of around 55 people, and simply put, we love to build apps. We're comprised of designers, developers, marketers, and through our passion, we've been able to make a variety of projects, and now we have around 10,000 monthly users on a variety of our different apps. Here are some of them. So we have Eatery, which is our first project that we took on that basically compiles all of the dining information from all of the dining halls and now college town eateries as well. We have Ithaca Transit, which helps people with bus times in the TCAT system. Uplift, which is about fitness at Cornell and helping you define different classes, hours of the gym, and the various equipment in those gyms. Polo, which is a really exciting one, is aiming to eliminate iClicker. No one wants to pay for $30 for a little piece of plastic, so we're aiming to start testing that in university courses. And this one's really neat because it really extends beyond the Ithaca community. There's a professor in Wisconsin who wants to try and get into one of his classes. And CourseGrab is a new pod. We'll be launching relatively soon, basically taking the website version of CourseGrab and putting it into your phone to increase the sense of immediacy by using push notifications and an unlimited tracking number of sections. And we have a variety of other projects that we're also taking on this semester. Pair is one of them, as Lucy mentioned. And so, yeah, we want to improve the experience of the Cornell community. And one way we love to do that is by giving back through teaching the stuff that we love. And so here are 4 courses. We teach digital product design, Android, iOS, and backend. And so to quickly talk about the iOS course, it's a 10-week course. It's 2 credits, and it covers sort of the entire spectrum of iOS development, starting with the basic of Swift syntax all the way to making API requests and persistence. And by the end, you'll be able to build, a robust application that you could, theoretically ship to the App Store. Anything to add, Lucy, about the course?
Not really, except to say that, our course is a much more in-depth version of what we're going to do today. So obviously we only have 1 hour a day to go over an introduction to iOS. So some things might not make a whole lot of sense in today's demo, but if you're interested in iOS, definitely take our course. I think applications open up in the next few weeks.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to get into the live demo. So we're going to be building a to-do list. And so the general idea, you can see a screenshot here on the iPhone, is you're going to be able to type up a task that you have pending, and you'll be able to add it to this list. And you can star very high important tasks that you need to do, and then you can check them off as you go. You can also delete tasks once they become outdated and stuff. And so yeah, we're going to be covering a lot of really cool functionality, and some of those things that we'll be covering are UI kit, delegation, auto layout, and UI table view. And so we'll be talking about these more in depth as we dive into the demo. But to sort of quickly recontextualize some of these. UI Kit's the framework that Apple provides. It's the basic infrastructure for building apps, provides various components, the view architecture, and manages a lot of the background interactions and functions of the application. Delegation is basically a design pattern where one class will delegate or give responsibility for a certain task to another class. Auto layout is a constraint-based layout system where you're able to take UI elements and put them on the screen, and it will appropriately place them depending on the frame size. And so we'll be going into more depth about that. And lastly, UI table view is actually one of the components within UI Kit, and it's a way to basically display large amounts of information. It's really powerful because, some of the most famous apps in the world, think about something like Spotify, in your playlist you have a list of songs, but it really boils down to just using a UI table view to display that. And so, yeah, those are some of the things we're going to cover. Anything to add, Lucy?
No, I think we can go straight into the demo, although it seemed like somebody was trying to say something earlier.
Yeah, was that a question? Sorry.
Yeah, well, if not, we can just jump right into the demo. Yeah, so I can share my screen. Okay. Am I sharing? I think I'm sharing, right? Cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask everybody, we sent out kind of a link earlier telling everyone to download Xcode and also to download our original source code, just to kind of get I guess a poll. Has everybody done that? Or should we wait a little bit to give you more time to kind of download? I don't know if the best way is
raise your hands maybe or something.
Or maybe in our chat or something. Yeah, we are intending this workshop to be highly you follow along with what we're doing, because I think you learn the most by doing. But in the case that you can't get Xcode downloaded in time, or it's just not working for you, I guess you can also just follow along and see how we are kind of building this app from scratch. I think you still gain a lot from that. So.
Lucy, one quick thing. Could you maybe just close out of Xcode and show which file to open from the zip file in case someone's doing that the first time?
I'm a little hesitant to do that just because my Xcode just crashes if I do that, but it takes a while for a file to load for me. I think there's something wrong with the Xcode, but this is supposed to be if you either cloned our repo or downloaded our zip file, this is a folder that you should have. So it will have this final folder, which is the final code that we have, and also we have the starter code. So in this file, you'll see this to-do list.xcode project file. This is a file that you would want to open, and this should launch Xcode directly for you. Yeah, so this is what I have open right now. Should I give it a few minutes, or do you think I can go ahead and just start doing the demo?
So for the people who's participating in this Zoom call, do you guys all have Xcode downloaded successfully on your desktop? If you guys do, just can you guys give us a green check mark, icon reaction right there. Yep, awesome. Okay, so Kelly says yes. Jocelyn says yes. Does anyone not have Xcode? It'd be easier, I think, if you just click on the note for that.
I don't have Xcode because I don't think I can download it. It looks like to be something you can only get on Mac.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can only do Xcode development on Mac or through a virtual machine. If that's the case, maybe you can just follow along with look on the screen with what I'm doing. Sorry about that. Yeah, then it sounds like we can maybe go ahead and get started, right? It seems like the people on the call mostly have Xcode downloaded.
So Arushi is saying that it's just almost done, but downloading. So maybe if it works for you guys, just give it a minute or two.
Okay, yeah, maybe in this time I can just kind of go over the Xcode environment maybe and kind of explain what all these things are. So what I have on the screen right now is this is my Xcode app. And Xcode is basically the main like IDE of iOS development. So IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and you can think of it as like, you know, this is where you edit your code. So like if you have VS Code, you can use that to edit like certain files, or maybe you have like Atom or like Sublime. Xcode in particular is really nice because first of all, this is provided by Apple, and also there's something called the simulator, which makes it very easy for you to like, when you write code, you can just run your code on that simulator, and so you can see directly like what your code is doing. So that's Xcode. And let me just go over briefly like what all these things are. So when you open Xcode, here you have like the main file that you're working on, but here on the sidebar, we have, this is kind of like the file manager, file explorer. So it shows you all the folders that you have within your Xcode project, and then all the files that you have. So, and then if you click on this button, it shows you this like bottom window, and this is like your console. When you run your application, if you ever want to do debugging, this is where your like print statements will go, and also if you have any like error in your code, this is where it'll also pop up. If you have like constraint errors or some networking issues like not working, it'll pop up here. And then you also have this sidebar. We're not going to be using it as much in our demo, but this just has some like helpful information if you use, say, like storyboarding, which is another way of developing like user interface components for the iOS app. It also gives you like information about, well, like this is, I guess, your history, and sometimes it gives you information about like each component as you're working on them. So yeah, and that's just like good. Yeah, it was like a quick help that gives you like any information you might need. Yeah, but that's just Xcode. It's pretty simple to use, very powerful.
Does anyone need more time just with downloading, you know, either the zip file or Xcode?
Awesome. I think if not, I think we are, you guys are good to go.
Okay, great. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we're just going to be going over how to build this pretty simple to-do list app. It's definitely a classic and in like any intro to development like workshop and course. And so we're going to be building this project from scratch. So we have provided some of the starter code for you just to make some things easier, but essentially you'll be building from an empty screen to what you see here. I wanted to briefly go over maybe like every single file that we have here, just so you understand like what each file is doing. So this is the Viewcontroller.swift file. So this is the main file that will basically create the screen that you see here, which is the main screen. And then we also have, you know, the to-do table view cell. This is another file where, so this file will create like this cell. So you see like this row that will be created by this file. And then you also have this file called main.storyboard. We will not be using that in this workshop. This is one way that iOS developers can lay out the user interface of their app, where they can like drag and drop different components onto the screen. But again, we're not going to be using this. And you also have scene delegate, and this is kind of like the launching file that like Xcode when you first open your app, this is the code that is run. So it basically sets up your window, it finds the first screen to show, and then it shows it. And then you also have here assets. And this is where like if you have any images that you're going to use in your app, you would just like put that file, put those images here. So you see that like we're going to be using this checkmark image and also the star image. So that's all here for you. So yeah, I have some other miscellaneous files. These two are not as relevant for the demo, I don't think, because I don't think we'll have time to go over them. So maybe like at the end, when we do use these files, I'll explain these some more. And here we just have some like tests and UI test folders, which again, we're not going to be touching. This is for if you're doing more like real world industry development where you have to really test your code. So yeah, I guess without further ado, we can get started with the demo. The first thing that I want you guys to do is actually, you'll notice up here, if you open the starter code, you should have 2 warnings. That's because I've commented out some of the code for us to actually build up. So these things won't work for now. I think what you can do is just comment all of it out for now. So you can do that by selecting all the code and then doing command /, which would just comment everything out. And then after that, you should also comment out these 2 lines, because these 2 lines are what actually calls this code that we just commented out. Yeah, so once you've done that, yeah, it's hard because I can't really tell like if you're all done with what I just said. But if you've done those things and then you press on this play button up here, this should build your code and then bring up your simulator. And then it'll just show you for now an empty screen because we haven't added anything to our app yet. I think it takes a while. Okay, so maybe. Oh shoot. Interesting. This is. I don't know why I have it's kind of weird. I think I'm having some, again, Xcode issues. I don't know why. My simulator.
Do you have any other programs or old simulators that you're still running by any chance that might be clear out some process?
I have a lot of Windows up right now, but I don't know if I have Xcode up, so not entirely sure. I don't have I only have this Xcode file open, so I don't know why this is the case. So I just quit my simulator, so I don't know. Let me see. Did you guys try running build? Does it work or no?
Does anyone have the file pulled up on their Xcode? I think for build, you just go to
yeah, so you just press the play button on the top left. Interesting. That's so weird. I feel like we always have like tech issues when you're going live.
Yeah, actually. Of course, it's like, like at a hackathon, you just have to have technical.
Yeah, the one time.
You have to. You just have to, yeah.
Just have to. Yeah, I've never even seen that issue before, so I don't know why that's.
Maybe try restarting Xcode, or maybe try.
I'm really nervous about doing that just because my Xcode just crashes. I don't know if I have like a system error, but
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
So Ariana said that hers is just a black iPhone screen.
Yeah, so that is supposed to happen. I'm just like, my Xcode is not working for some reason.
Okay,
So,
and then we have Jocelyn who said that her build failed. So maybe it is an Xcode thing.
Yikes.
One of the reasons potentially why the build would fail is if that commented out code that Lucy just did hasn't been commented out, that would cause an error.
Yeah,
so just to go over that.
Yeah, if you comment out like this spot, these lines, 126 to 160, and also comment out line 68 to 69, it should work.
Lucy, maybe what we could do is you can just start like going through building up the view controller, and I'll type along with you. And then whenever you want to show like a momentary step, we'll just really quickly, because I think my simulator works. If that works.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this, guys. I wish we didn't have this issue. It's definitely annoying. But that's okay. I think for the purposes of like just building out the code, what I have should suffice. And yeah, I guess we can do what Mathew said. Sorry about this again. Maybe I should have tested this earlier. Okay, so if you've built everything, then what you should see is the simulator and also a black screen. Again, this is because we've added nothing to our code so far. The first thing that I want you guys to do is, I'll just explain this code. So this is our main view controller currently, and so this function here, override func view did load. This is a function that is called every time your view loads. And so all of the code where you want to like add, so like all the views that you want to add to your screen will go here. This is where you customize view variables and where you add them to your super view, which is your main window. And also we have this function called setup constraints. This is kind of like the coding pattern that AppDev follows, where every time you want to lay out like what the views should look like and where they should go in relation to each other, this is where that would go. And then, you know, after that, any other functions that you have to add would go here. And then these are where you, like, if you have any extensions, you would just add that here. Yeah. So the first thing that we're going to do is inside of our view did load, we're going to create this task title. And it's very easy. So all you need to do is say title is equal to task. And basically what you're doing right now is this view has I guess it's like a property field called title, and you're just setting that to what you want for now. And also you can set your view controller background to be white because currently it's black, right? So what we want to do is say view.background color is equal to .white. And so this would just look at your view and edit the property to be white. And then this is what we call a large title. If you, like most iOS apps that you've seen, they have like two different kinds of main title layouts. So there's one where it's like a small label up top, and then there's this one which is like a large table, like a large title. And so to get this to show up, you want to set another property. And this is a property of your navigation controller navigation bar. So what you want to do is say navigation controller dot navigation bar dot prefers large titles equal to true. And that's how your app will know, like, oh, this title, let's use this like large styling for that. And so once you finish these lines, if you press play again, you should see that the task has popped up in the title. I'm sorry again that I can't just show you.
If you want to quickly, I can quickly just screen share and show what that'd be like.
I think for now we probably don't have to do that, just because like this I don't want to like run over time either. I think maybe after I've like laid out the next three things, that's what we can do. Or like we can switch off. Mathew?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing to mention is that, so you have like the way this app is, it's a stack of views. And so right now we only have our root view controller, which Lucy showed in the scene delegate has been set to this view controller. Mm-hmm. And you know, in apps that you use day to day, like you can tap on something and it will launch a new screen and you're putting another view on that stack. And so the navigation controller basically handles all of that. And that's what that is. If you had, you know, if you wanted to sort of know where that's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is, you see that right under our title, we have this text, right, that says, oh, use me to keep up with your daily tasks. So this, the component that actually creates this is called a UI label. And so Mathew mentioned earlier UI kit, right? So UI kit is basically the framework that Apple provides provides you that handles all of the infrastructure that you need to build your app. And this namely includes like, you know, all of these like components, right? Like it provides you with, you know, the UI labels, the UI text fields, UI buttons for you to just add onto your app. And it also handles all of your interaction infrastructure and event infrastructure, so that like, you know, this is how when you click on your screen, your app knows how to handle it. You know, like I don't have to write any code to really handle that because Apple does it for me. All I care about is when like something has been tapped, what do I do in response? So the way we will add this label onto our screen is here we'll just declare and initialize this view variable. So let's just say private let to do label equal to UI label. So this just tells the view like, hey, let's make an instantiation of this UI label class. And so once you have this to do label, what you want to do now is set the properties of this label, right? So what is the main property that we want? Well, clearly the text. So what we do is say like label.text is equal to use me to keep up with all your daily tasks. So that's like simple enough. And so these, all of the components provided by Apple have properties associated with them, and this is how you actually customize the styling of these components. So some other properties that we might want to set is the font color, obviously. So, you know, let's just set this font color to be black. The way we do that, again, is very simple. We just say to do label text color is equal to black. And then we say like, oh, then what font do we want, right? So we can say to do label dot font is equal to dot system font, and then you give it a size. And I think the size that we use for this is 15. So this, you know, obviously looks very straightforward, right? So you set all the properties, you styled it. Now the next thing you want to do is just add this to your view, right? So you just need to do view.add subview to do label. And so this just takes this component and adds it to your main view. You know, this is pretty straightforward, right? You've made this label, you've set the properties, but you know, how does the app actually know where to put this label, right? So that's where auto layout comes in. And I guess to explain auto layout, I know Mathew did it a little bit earlier, but auto layout is a way for you to lay out your views onto the screen so that like, you know, your screen will look good on every different phone size. So like somebody with a really small iPhone 4 can still see everything the way you intend versus someone who has like the iPhone 11 Max or something. And so to do this, we need to set another property called, so it's to do label dot translates auto resizing mask into constraints, and we set this to be equal to false. And this just lets your code know that you're going to be doing auto layout. And so once you set this up, you can actually start setting up like the constraint on this label. So I'm going to scroll down and show you what I guess like auto layout is. Auto layout is basically a way for you to basically chain one of your views to like another view on the screen. So basically every single component has certain properties. So you have like a leading anchor, you have a trailing anchor, top anchor, bottom anchor, width anchor, and height anchor. So basically, you know, what we want to do here is, let me just write out the code and I'll explain it later. So inside our setup constraints, we want to activate our NS layout constraints, right? So we say NS layout constraint dot activate. So this is where you're going to be activating like your auto layout. And what we want to do here is say to do label dot top anchor dot constraint, and we're going to do equal to view dot save area layout guide dot top anchor, and say And then let's say to do label dot leading anchor dot constraint equal to view dot leading anchor constant 20. To do label dot trailing anchor dot constraint equal to view dot trailing anchor constant -20. And then let's say to do label dot height anchor dot constraint equal to constant 15. So, this is a lot of code, but I think it's pretty straightforward. What we're doing is we're saying this label, the top anchor, which is the top of that label, we want this top to be 10 pixels down from the top of my view. I want it to be 20 pixels to the right of the leading edge of my screen, and I want it to be 20 pixels away from the end of our screen. And we also want the type to be 15. So I think this is where I guess Mathew can run it and show what that looks like, maybe.
Yes. I just, hold on, give me 1 second while I actually realized that I needed to be typing during that one section. I forgot to type that constraint, so give me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And also, if anything is not working, please let us know. It's kind of hard for me to gauge where you guys are. So, and if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know too. Yeah.
So one thing that you need to do in order for this to show up, you need to actually call this. You need to call this function, because if you don't, then your view to load automatically gets called when this view controller is presented on your thing. So otherwise, it wouldn't know how to constrain this label. So if I share really quickly now, hopefully this works.
Yeah, I forgot to call my function, so.
Hopefully everyone can see. So I'm going to launch my simulator. We have all this setup stuff. I've called the function, and then here is our constraint, our different, our constraints on that label. So build succeeded. That is not a simulator. What the heck? That is very frustrating. Let's try this. Oh, there we go. Okay. This might just take, once this upload, once, the first time always is the longest for the simulator. So once you do it once, it's pretty quick to check what changes you've made to the screen. So just bear with me. Does anyone have any questions while we wait for this?
So there was can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
So there's a question on the workshops channel from Rue, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It says, I'm new to app dev. Do we apply to join the class or to join the teaching staff? So for you guys, I guess this is from someone who is, I'm not sure if I'm interpreting as new to just join app dev or just join the class, but either way, how do you join as in as a freshman who is not sure what app dev is, about intro to iOS development, the course, and also how does someone who is also an app dev apply to become part of the course? TA, I guess.
Yeah, so if you are a student who are looking to actually just take this course, I think applications go out in the next few weeks, and it's pretty simple. It's mostly just kind of like a sign-up interest form, and once you've indicated interest, I think we just hand that off to the registrar, and they can, I think they set up our course, and then we'll give you a number, like a PIN number, and then you can enroll via Student Center. So that's how you would actually just take this course. We don't reject anyone, so as long as you're interested and you're willing to do the work, we'll take you as a student. As far as joining the teaching staff, what you do is if you apply to AppDev and you get into AppDev, any iOS developer can be a TA in the course.
Awesome, sounds good.
So does everyone see this? So now we can actually see our label. And so you can see how it's constrained with with 20 pixels between the leading edge. The reason why it doesn't go like it's longer here is just because there's not more text, but the box really does end with like negative 20 pixels to the trailing edge. We've anchored it below the the top of the view, and we've given it a height of 15. So yeah.
Cool. I can take over again. Okay. Yeah. Let me just. Okay, so I know it took a while and kind of explain line by line what we did with laying out our label, but I think the rest of this screen should go pretty quickly because we're going to be doing the same exact thing for all of these views. So the text field and also the add button. So this text field, what we want to do is, again, you do follow the same process. You say private let to do text field is equal to UI text field. So then this creates an instance of this class, and you just do the same thing. So after your review.addSubView, you would also just set all the properties on this text field. So the properties that we care about are to do text field.placeholder. So if you don't have text in your text field, this is what's going to be shown. So let's just say enter task. And we again want to do text field dot translates our resizing mask into constraints, and we want to set that to be false. You do this every time for every single view to do auto layout on it. And you will set the background color to be white, because that's what the background color is. And to do text field, so the next thing we want to do is like, here we have this like nice rounded corner, right? The default UI text field does not have that. So to kind of like make our border and also corner radius, you want to set to do text field dot layer dot corner radius is equal to 10, and to do text field dot layer border color, you can set that to black. And to do text field dot layer dot border width is equals to 1. And then the last thing we're going to set is the font of like the text inside. Oh, okay. So I'm getting a error here. The reason for this error is like components in Apple take different types for different properties. So for like regular colors on just the component itself, you use something called the UI color class, but this is setting a color on the layer, so we use CG color class. So to get around that, we just say UI color dot black dot CG color. And what this is doing is it's just taking the UI color black and making it into the CG color class type. Yeah, and then you set the to do text field font, and then you do system font of size 16, and then you can just add to the subview the to do text field. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's like a very similar process to what you just did for the label. And now we want to do the same thing. We want to add the constraints to our text field. So the constraints that we have for this is we want our text field to be, I think it's like 20 pixels down from our label, 20 pixels from the left. And I think we want the height to be, I think it's 15 or 20. Oh no, it's 30. Yeah. So again, same process. So NS layout constraint activate. And you just set those constraints. So you say to do text field top anchor constraint equal to do label bottom anchor constant 20, to do text field leading anchor constraint equal to view leading anchor constant 20, and let's just set the height to do text field dot height anchor dot constraint equal to constant 30. So now we've set out the height constraint, the top, and also the leading constraint. What we have not done is tell like Swift, like where does this label end? And actually what I did was I constrained the label end to the beginning of this button. So let's just add this button onto our screen as well. So again, this is gonna be a little bit repetitive, you know, because of the same exact process, right? So up top, where you declare and initialize view variables, we want to say private let submit button equals to UI button. Again, please let me know if I'm going a little bit too fast. I'm going a little bit faster because this is the same process. So we've created and instantiated this submit button object, and now we can lay out the properties. So the properties for the button, you do submit button dot set title, and this title is add, and you set a state. Submit button dot set title color. So you can say what color you want this to be, and in our case, we want it to be white. Again, the state is normal. Submit button dot title label. You can set the font to be, I do bold system font, so it's just the bolded version of a normal font. And I think the size of this is 15. And then once again, we do, to enable auto layout, we say submit button dot translates auto resizing mask into constraint, set that to be false. And submit button, and you want to set the background color, right? So background color, and you can set that to, for now, let's just say we want to be blue. And yeah, so we can set a layer, the corner radius. So submit button dot layer dot corner radius. I think the corner radius for this is 10. And then yeah, we can just add this submit button into our view. So, you know, like pretty simple. You're setting all these properties and adding it to your view. One thing that I want to note is different components all have like different property names. So sometimes it could be confusing if you're just getting started with iOS, but it's really not too bad. I think it's muscle memory the more you do it, but in the beginning, I usually just refer to the Apple documents. Yeah, so then I'll add the constraints for the submit button. So ns layout constraint dot activate. So this will be very similar to our to do text field. So we say submit button dot top anchor. Let's just set. Okay. Let's just. Oh shoot. Okay. So let's just set our top anchor constraint. Why is it? Okay. So we can set it to just, here you see it's just equal to the top of my text field, right? So you can just say equal to do text field dot top anchor. And you can just set the bottom to be equal to the bottom of my to do text field. So same thing, submit button dot bottom anchor dot constraint equal to do text field dot bottom anchor. And you can also set a height on this and just set that, let's just again make that equal to my text field. So submit button dot height anchor dot constraint equal to do text field dot height anchor. But then we want this button to be 20 pixels to the left of the end of my screen, right? So we say submit button dot trailing anchor. Trailing anchor dot constraint equal to view dot trailing anchor constant, and this is -20. So you see that like, oh, also you want to set a width on this. So button dot with anchor dot constraint, and we can say equal to constant. I think for this one, let's just say 100 or something. So now we've kind of like hard coded this, right? This submit button will always be a width of 100. So this will be, with 120 pixels from the right, with the same top and bottom anchor as my text field. But now what I said earlier, right? I constrain my text field to my submit button. So let's just add that back into here. So I want to say to do text field dot leading anchor or trailing anchor, constraint that to submit button dot leading anchor, and the constant would be -20. So now you have this this text field 20 pixels away from this submit button, and they're both 20 pixels away from the sides, and I think 20 pixels from the label. So yeah, now you have these two. So now if you run your simulator, you should have these two views laid out. And so what you have might not look exactly like this because my blue color is not the blue color that Apple provides you. It's like a custom color that I added. If you want to have the same color as me, you can edit the background color here. So let me just find, okay. So here, this is very simple because you're just using like a color that Apple provides for you. But what we can also do is you can define your own color, right? So you can say UI color, and you can create a whole new UI color. And something that you could do is this, where you can set the red, green, and blue RGB of like this color that you want. So the blue that I chose, it's like 32, 171, and 211, and the alpha is just 1. So yeah, if you're familiar with RGB, it's just like
you're missing 1.5 on the green, 255.
Okay, yes, 255. Yeah, so I believe now if you run your simulator, you should see this text field and also this button. So Mathew, can you just like confirm for me that that's what you see?
Sure. I mean, do you want me to just run it on my thing and then tell you if that's what I'm getting, or?
Yeah, can you just run it? We can also just show it if you guys want.
Just quickly switch over. So this is what I have now, and as you can see, we gave our button a very wide, 100 pixels, make sure it had ample space. But you can see our text field now is here with our placeholder text, and yeah, so everything's laid out the way it should be. And we have that nice special color that
yeah, so that's very nice and all. Let me share my screen again.
does anyone have any questions or anything to clarify before we go on?
Okay, yeah. Honestly, please let us know if we're going too fast, too slow.
One thing to note is, definitely take advantage of Xcode's autocomplete features, since it's so a lot of this is verbose in terms of setting all the properties. Xcode is really good with autocomplete, so whenever you see what you want, click tab and it'll save you a lot of typing.
Yeah, you can see even for me, I mostly do rely on the autocomplete, and sometimes my fingers click the wrong one, but it's definitely very nice. It makes it so that you don't have to necessarily remember all of the properties. I definitely don't remember translates, auto resizing, mass into constraints. I just autocomplete that. So okay, so we if you take a look at the screen that we want to build, right, and you compare it to what we have so far, we basically have most of everything set up, right? The only thing that is left is this table view. And again, like Mathew briefly explained this earlier, but a table view is a component that UIKit provides you, but it's a very powerful component because like every single app has this, right? This is really the core of iOS apps, like showing a lot of information in a table format. And so this is definitely like great for you to learn how to use. So again, this is very repetitive because we're going to be doing the same exact process. So we're going to say private let to do table view equals to UI table view. And here, there are a number of options that you can choose. You can just choose to instantiate it the normal way. I usually do this one where I kind of indicate that like I'm not going to set a frame and I just want a plain table view. There are some special styles that you can do, but it's not necessary for our purposes today. Yeah, and then the next thing is with a table view, there are some special things that you have to do. Namely, you have to set a delegate, and we'll just set that to self. And you also have to set a data source, and you also set this to self. And then we do the same thing as before, where we say translates auto resizing. You get the point now. Set that to false. And then you want to add the subview, add it to our view. And yeah, so that should be most of the setup that you have to do for the table view. So, okay, I said earlier that like you have to set the delegate and data source, right? But like this maybe makes no sense to you if you don't know iOS development. I guess, delegate, the way Mathew explained earlier was it is a design pattern that allows one class to delegate responsibility of an action to another class. And I guess like maybe even that explanation doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you. But in the context of this to-do table view, you basically have your to-do table view, which is an instance of the table view class, right? That's fine and all, but like the table view doesn't know like how to handle certain actions, right? That table view doesn't know what its data is, right? So it delegates that responsibility to to me, like coding this view controller, right? So I'm saying like, oh, my delegate is this view and my data source is this view as well. And so that's what I'm doing here. And so now I'm getting a warning from Xcode saying that like, oh, I'm not conforming to the delegate and I'm not conforming to the data source. And that makes sense because like I haven't actually done anything yet. Like I haven't actually like set up any code to handle this table view. So I will do that now. And the way that we usually do this is like if you go all the way to the bottom here, it says to do add class extensions. And this is where I will I guess add the extension and conform to everything that I need to conform to. So namely the UI table view delegate and UI table view data source. So I'll just do that. So Viewcontroller, UI table view delegate, UI table view data source. So what this is saying is like, I'm going to extend to my current class these other classes. And then here you get another warning, right? So it's saying like, oh, do you want to add protocol stubs because like I don't conform to this data source delegate? And you just say yes, and then they'll give you the code that you have to like fill in. So as I said earlier, like your table view expects like certain things to be handled by the view, right? So like in this case, they really need this information. So it's required that you fill it out if you're going to use the table view. So obviously here it's like, so this is asking you like, oh, how many rows do you want in the table view, right? And this is asking you what cell should I use for each table view. So we've now like added all of our views theoretically. Like we've added all of these views and components onto our app. what we're missing is the actual data, right? So what data do we actually want to like populate on the screen? Well, we want our to-dos, right? So to actually like start working with our table view, you want to create that. The data structure that we're going to use today is an array. I don't know how much CS background you guys have, but it's just kind of like a list that you use to contain like certain kinds of information. So right now we just want like a string. So let's just say like private var to do array string. So this just creates an array where every single element in your array is a string, and initially there's nothing in it because you have no to-dos, right? So when you come back to our extension, for a number of rows in section, how many rows do you want to display? Well, you want to display the number of to-dos that you have in your array, right? So you just have to return to-do array dot count. So this way, if you have one item, it'll return one row. If you have two, it'll return two, etc. So here it says cell for row add. So this is asking you like, okay, like you want this table view, you want to show these like, you know, array elements in the table view. Well, what view do I actually return for each cell, right? So you have to kind of tell UI table view what to return. So for now, let's just use the most basic component that they provide you, which is a UI table view cell. So we can say let cell is equals to UI table view cell. And again, this is just another component that's provided to you. And you want to return the cell back to the function, so it knows that like for every single row, you're going to be using a UI table view cell. But how do you actually like put the information that you want into this cell? Well, you want to set again a property within this component. So you say cell dot, I think it's label, text label, and you want to set the text to be equal to whatever that element is in your to-do array. So to-do array at index path dot row. And so this should be intuitive. I don't know how much CS background you have, but it's just saying that like, oh, like if it's asking you what cell to return for this first row, it will look into your to-do array, and index path dot row is just like the number, the index. So it'll be like 0 initially, and then it'll say like, oh, what is the first element of my to-do array, and then it'll just like populate that text.
One quick thing to mention is that you can like see that index path being passed in as an argument to this function. So like the table view, when you click on a cell, registers like what index path dot row that was. So it'll pass it to this function, and then we're using that information to get the correct populate our cell with the correct like to do item string.
So yeah, I think maybe Mathew can run. Oh, okay. The thing that I forgot to do was I didn't add any constraints to my UI table view. So I've like created this table view, like I set the data, that's great, and I've added it to my view, but I didn't tell it where to go. So let's just do that very quickly now. And this should be the same process. And it should be very easy because all I care about is the top, leading, trailing, and bottom anchor. So let me just set this to be NS layout constraint activate. Let's say to do table view dot top anchor dot constraint equal to do text field dot bottom anchor, and let's say like we want that to be 20 pixels to the bottom of that text field, and say to do table view dot leading anchor constraint to I guess 20 pixels from my view leading anchor, view dot leading anchor constant 20. Set the trailing anchor. trailing anchor, set that to be -20. And then the bottom, so we just want that to be 20 pixels from the bottom, 20 pixels up from the bottom of the screen. So view dot save area layout. So you want save area layout guide dot bottom constant -20. I want to make a quick note about this. Oh, it's dot bottom anchor. I want to make a quick note about what view.save area layout guide is. I think you might have noticed that like for certain things, I just say like view dot the anchor, and for certain other anchors, I use view.save area layout guide. This is just because like there are so many different iOS apps, and like I think when they like released iOS or like the iPhone 10, they got rid of like the top bar, and that way like different phones are actually laid out slightly differently, where you have like more space on like the UI or the iPhone X that you want to like avoid. So if you just do like view.top, like you might like end up constraining your view to like the very top of the screen when really you want just like the usable real estate of your screen. So yeah. So I think here, Mathew, I don't know if you've been following along, right? So if you run your screen now, I think you should have the...
What I have now is once I run it, this is what I see. And so we can see that we have a blank table view, and we have like all these cells that have yet to be populated with anything.
Right, yeah. And this is expected because, you know, your array currently is empty, right? So how do you actually start adding and actually interacting with your app? This is, I guess, the last thing that we'll do for this first part, I guess, of this demo. We could go a little bit longer if you guys want to. Okay, so as you see on Mathew's screen, like you have all of the views laid out, right? Great. So now this is the part where you actually add the interaction, like start handling, like, you know, like when a user taps on the UI text field, you want them to be able to start texting or like typing in it. When they click on add, you want to handle that. So what we want to do is, in this submit button, currently everything is static, but you actually want to add like interactions to that. So to do that, you just need to set another property. So submit button dot, it's called add target. So add target just kind of like adds a function. It like chains a function to this component so that like every time you tap on the button, it knows to call that function. So the target is self, which is like this current view, and the action is selector. And so this is a function that you want to call. We haven't defined that function yet, so let's just call that like, let's call that add to do. And the event is touch up inside. So this line basically just every time your app detects that like a user has touched the button, it'll call this function add to do. And it currently doesn't exist right now, so we want to add that. And so if you come down to here, this to do, it says add button action handlers. So this is where you'll actually start to define that function of like what to do when a user clicks on that button. So you want to say add objective C func add to do. So this is a function declaration. And so what do you want to do when you click on the button, right? Well, you want to say, you want to get the text in that text field. So say like let to do text is equals to do text field dot text, right? So currently you have that text field, right? So when you click on add, you want to look at whatever is in that text field and you want to add that to your array. So what you can do is you would say, so here I'm saving that into a variable, and then I'm going to add that into my to-do array. So to-do array dot append to-do text. So I'm going to take that string and add it to my array. And then now I want to reload my table view because now the data has updated. I want to make sure my view is updated along with my data. So I say to do text field or to do table view dot reload data. And so this will tell your app to reload everything inside that table view. So you'll see now that it's coming up with kind of an error, right? So what does this error actually mean? Well, basically, within Swift, we have a type called optional, and that is technically the type of my to-do text field.text. This is because when you click on this add button, it may be that there's no text inside of the text field. Maybe the user hasn't actually added anything to my text field, right? And so there's nothing there. So it's a nil object. If you're familiar with Java, it's just kind of like a null. And so I can't just add that to my array because my array expects an array of strings, right? It can't be you can't add a nil object into your array and then it tries to set that as a data for the cell and then it'll see nothing, right? So to get around this issue, you actually want to handle this optional. So to do that, we want to unwrap so again, I think this maybe won't make a whole lot of sense, so we don't have a lot of time to go into the details of Swift, but it's called unwrapping. So we want to unwrap the value in this optional. So we say if let to do text. So we say if let to do text equals to do text field dot text, then you will append and reload the data.
So, yeah, so it's basically like a safeguard. So in the case where it is nil, you'll see we have this new let to do text, and that you'll only enter this block of code if to do text field dot text is actually not nil. So you're protecting yourself from that potential case where it is nil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I guess one of the functionalities of an optional is that it really forces a developer to be conscientious about what values might have, what variables might have values and what variables might not. If you're familiar with Java, you might come across a lot of null pointer exceptions, right? It just crashes your entire system. You don't want that in your iOS app, because if you unexpectedly, if you don't handle these optionals, you might just unexpectedly have a nil object, and it just causes a lot of errors. So doing this, you just the developer always make sure that there is a value. Yeah, so I think with this code, if Mathew, if you run your simulator, this should make it so that every time you type in your text, I think it's to do text or something. What is this?
Oh wait, yeah, this is.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a little bit different then. Yeah.
Wait,
this is because to do objects. You want to be the string.
No, wait, which one? Yeah, it's the text field, right?
Text. Yeah, and I think you want to get rid of all of the. Yep. And then.
Alrighty. So now if we launch this. So when we first see the app, nothing's actually changed, right? Because all we've done is added this functionality. But if we are to tap, if we are to, it's the first time I launched the keyboard. So that's an example of a background thing. UIKit handles me clicking on this text field. It'll launch the keyboard, which is really nice. So how about I put in attend workshop. So now if I click add, nothing happens because I messed something up. So. Oh my gosh, just give me a quick second while I see what
I wonder.
I'm doing. actually being? Okay, yeah. So I commented this out earlier. We never actually registered this function. Wait, no, not that. We never registered this add to do item function. So my button was useless. So if we do this again, this will work. Okay.
Oh,
Boom. Yeah.
whew, thank God. Yeah. And so, yeah, so right now, like, I know, wait, Matthew, I think you commented out the part, oh, wait. So,
Clearing out the text field.
yeah. So the thing that I didn't add, and the last thing that you would want to do is, like, as you saw earlier, like Matthew, when he added the text into the table view, the text is still there in the text field, right? We don't want that because it's just not great user experience. So you actually clear that text when you click on the submit button. So the fix for that is pretty simple. It's just, okay, so you just want, like, once you append the text to your table view, you just want to say, like, oh, to do text field dot text is equals to the empty string. So this would just clear everything and give you the empty text field to work with again. So what we did so far is, now we're able to open this app and add strings to like add to-dos into our to-do list app, right? We haven't actually implemented this check mark and the star button yet. I don't know if we have time to go over it just because I know this workshop is 1 hour long. I don't know if, should we, Matthew or Han, do you think we should keep going into that or leave? Because we did include a final version of the code that has all the functionalities if you want to, like, run that and kind of take a look. And I can also take some time to just go over, like, what it's doing. Maybe, I don't know if we have time to go over, like, actually building everything though.
I think it's, again, it's totally up to you guys, but if you guys have the final version of the code, and I think and like if people can check that out just to kind of mess around with who you guys did differently, I think that's totally fine. Yeah, but I'm curious, what do you guys think?
I think it might be worth, like, if we want to go through deletion, like selecting a row, since that doesn't require too much, like, building out a new table view cell. I think that could be cool, because what happens if you want to, if you mistype something and you actually want to delete it?
Yeah, then I will do that. Yeah, so maybe the best thing is, like, I'll go over that, like what Matthew just said, like how do you actually delete a row, right? And then maybe I'll take another, like, 10 minutes just to walk you through, like, the code that we couldn't get to today. So at least you can understand, like, how we implemented all of these, like, check marks and stars, so that later, like, if you want to, like, take a look at the final code, you can refer back to the recording and at least, like, know what's happening. I think that's probably the best that we can do. Yeah. So what Matthew said earlier was, yeah, like, what if you mistype something and you want to get rid of it, right? How do you actually delete things from your table view? And if you guys have an iOS or, like, an Apple phone, then you should be familiar with, like, swiping to delete, right? You just, like, swipe to the left and then the red button pops up and it's, like, very nifty, it's just kind of like it's, like, a very nifty feature. And the good news is that's actually custom. It's like built into table view, so you don't actually have to, like, do a whole lot of, like, code to get that functionality. It is another function that's, like, it's like an interface function that's defined for you within, I think, UI table view delegate. And the code for that is, I think if you write commit editing style, this first line, just enter. And so, oh wait, hold on. No, this is, yeah, I think it's this one. So this is a function that is called every time the table view recognizes, like, a swipe gesture. So what you want to do now is say if editing style is equal to delete, meaning, like, so every time like you do a certain gesture on a table view, your app will recognize that and call this function, right? But in particular, this action is like a delete action. So if in fact you're trying to delete, then it will be caught in this if statement. And what we want to do now is just say like to do array dot remove at index path dot row. So whatever row you did that action in, I would just remove that from your array. And you want to say table view dot delete rows at index path. And you can set like an animation for that. So say like with fade. And and that's it. Like that's all the code that you want that you have to implement for this. So if you run your app again, Mathew, that should have like a nifty swipe. Yeah. So as you can see, like it's very simple. Like all the code, all the hard work is done for you by Apple.
Oh, I wrote a meaningless thing. I want to delete it. Oh, look at that. Sweat.
Oh, and it just deletes. Yeah, it's very nifty, and I think what you'll find with iOS development, the cool thing is that like a lot of the really powerful functionalities have been handled by you. So I think it makes it really nice because like if you just learn how to like use those tools, you can build really, really powerful, cool apps. Yeah, so I'll maybe just take another maybe 5 minutes just to go over like the check mark and star stuff. But actually, Mathew, do you have the final code, right?
Yeah, I can.
Maybe you can like show what the final app should look like.
Sure, yeah. Okay, let me just re-share. Okay.
I don't know if everything will integrate. I can't tell if everything will integrate like very easily. This is okay.
I'll like first just show what the final thing is, and then we can maybe break down the things that have changed.
Yeah.
Oh, why did it? I just closed my. Do I have two similars? Hold on, just give me a second. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, is that just the final code? Or?
Let me launch another simulator. It's not like showing up for some reason.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, do you guys have any questions or something? Thanks for sticking with us through this entire workshop. If you have any questions about like either the course or app dev or what we just did today, we can take some time to answer those.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, and what's like kind of almost painful is like there's so much that we'd like to cover in more depth to give you a better like foundation in terms of understanding, and that's what the course is really good at doing. A lot of the stuff that we sort of just glossed over, whether it be optionals or some of the stuff that we might just explain now, you'll really have like a concrete understanding by taking the course. Okay, so now here is the final code. So it's the same idea, right? Like I can add a task, but what you'll see is that it's a different cell. So that's the first thing we're going to show. So previously in our code, in our table view cell for row at, we used that UI table view cell, which was already built by Apple. But, for example, any app, we might want to customize, right, and have our own personalized cell. And so that's what this to-do table view cell that Lucy created is. So it has more elements besides just a title. So it has a to-do label, right? But it also has these buttons, which you can actually see. So it's the same idea. We instantiate, whatever elements we want using it from UIKit. So in this case, we have buttons. We'll lay them out, by using constraints. Except here, we're constraining them within the cell, not the view. And we'll set like our properties. So you'll see that it's a lot of the same motions, just for slightly different contexts. Okay, so that's one aspect, but maybe you want to, Lucy, sort of touch upon, do we touch upon delegation and how like that works, or maybe do we talk about the new class of to do?
Yeah. So can you show what the app looks like, and I can talk about
Sure.
delegation. Yeah. So the other more complex component or concept that we introduced with this like new cell is like now when you click on either the circle or the star, you actually want to like handle that, right? And so with this, we introduced a few more things. One being we created, so instead of having like an array of strings earlier that shows the text, now what we did was we created a separate class for the to-do. So if we go to to-do.swift, yeah, so now you see that like here we created a new to-do object, right, in which so this to-do object has a description, which is the string that you want to show, but it also has some other Boolean fields like completed or starred, right? And this is how like, you know that like this row has been set to be starred or set to be like completed. And so that's one thing that we changed. We made the model more complex. Another thing that we did was we added delegation and protocols. And so the reason why we did this was because like, we created this custom cell, right? And now this has our view with the check mark and the star. But when you actually click on it, the cell itself cannot handle that. So as we explained earlier, delegation is when one class gives responsibility to another class, right? So currently our cell cannot handle this button click because like, all of the data lives inside another class. So in order to actually update the data, we created a to-do delegate protocol. And so if you're familiar with Java, this is kind of like an interface where you declare like, these are the functions that I need to be implemented in order for all of my functionalities to work, right? So we created this delegate, and inside of Viewcontroller, when we actually create the cell, we tell the cell, so I think we say cell.delegate at some point. So, okay, yeah, so here is the Viewcontroller conform to that delegate. So it provides the functionalities for those functions. So like set completed, set start, all the actual like implementation is there. And when you actually,
Go ahead.
yeah, and then when you actually instantiate the cell, I think you scroll up a little bit in the cell, you configure it with a delegate that is your cell. And so every time you create an instance of the cell class, you tell that cell that like, I will be your delegate and whatever you need, I will handle for you. So that's the other thing that we kind of implemented.
So yeah, like as opposed to last time where we just set like the text label, right? We just did like text label dot text. We have more information that we want to pass in. So we came up with a custom configure function. So if I go to my to-do table view cell, you'll see this function called configure, and it takes in a to-do object. It takes in the current index and as well as the delegate. So that's just a clean way to pass more information in and make your code more concise. And so that's what this configure function is doing. It's basically configuring the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I think and the last thing that maybe we can show just in the app is, and we might not explain this, but maybe like clicking on a row.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So whoa. No, this is just we just wanted to show you like what a different page might look like, because obviously we have 1 hour, we can't go over everything, but I think it's cool to show more than just one screen. So this is that screen. So every time we click on a row, it'll take you to a new screen where you can add like sub to-dos. And this is using navigation controller. Yeah.
So quickly highlight where it's happening. There's a bunch, and it's really nice having all these inbuilt functions, and one of them is did select row at. So UIKit will handle like an event when the user touches an individual row, but you get to choose what you'd like to do with that. So what we ultimately do right here is we have another view controller called to-do item view controller, and that's the thing that's showing right here. So we quickly make an instantiation of that class, and we save it in this let, and then we actually push it on. So you can see that this push view controller function takes in our let variable, and it wants an animation. And using navigation controller, we'll push it on. So that's basically what's happening when we click this.
Mm-hmm.
It's making that and then pushing it onto the stack. And that's where the idea of that stack comes in that I mentioned earlier, that it's like a bunch of screens. And when you like click this reverse button, you're taking that off the stack. So, Yeah, that's like a really like a core component to a lot of iOS single screen apps that you'll get very familiar with when you do more of this stuff.
Yeah, so that's all we have today for the demo. I think Mathew can kind of continue with the last few slides just to close everything off.
Yeah, so that was the end of the demo. Yeah, it's, definitely would like to get to all the things we want to do, but definitely explore that final code. And I feel like with the general background that you might have now, you'll be able to sort of piece a lot of the things together. But nothing definitely beats taking the course and really having like a firm conceptual understanding of a lot of this stuff. So yeah, we just wanted to quickly talk about why iOS. What makes this meaningful. So yeah, people use their phones every day, and the fact that you can develop for that medium in such a direct way is something that's really powerful. iOS makes up nearly 60% of the mobile OS market in the U.S., which is that's a crazy consumer base, and you can develop for once you're on the App Store, you're on the App Store for everyone, right? Like that's a really cool thing, and that's one thing that we hope we can sort of show you is sort of shrinking that idea that it's such a long, roadmap to actually shipping an app. Like with a little more, time spent in terms of different things you can do with iOS, you can have an idea, develop that in a relatively quick time frame, and then you can, make a developer account and then get approved on the App Store. It's really, we want to try to demystify how daunting that may seem. Because I certainly felt that, before taking this, I was like, you're on the App Store, you're like some, whiz person. It's really not anything all that special. And then Swift is is the language that we used in this demo, and that's actually the first lecture of our iOS course is going over that because definitely nice to know all the syntax and stuff. But it's a really cool language. It's concise, it's expressive, it's elegant. There's a lot of syntactic sugar to be found within it. And so, those are just some of the things that we like. Lucy, anything to add in terms of why iOS for you?
No, not really. But I really, really like iOS development, and I like it because of how accessible it is. You mentioned this, but everybody has their phone. They carry it around all the time, and it's as soon as you wake up, you're on your phone. You're on the bus, you're on your phone. And so I think learning iOS development is extremely meaningful in that way because you really can cause a lot of impact in people's lives, and honestly, in a very simple manner too. You don't have to write crazy code like what we did today. There are to-do list apps on the market, right? And what we've done in this lecture and our final code is basically what the to-do list app is, and it's on the app market. So it's not crazy code, and you can publish it and create impact that way. And I just think
And so that wraps up this workshop. Thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and hopefully you guys had a fun time.
And just lastly, I again want to plug our course. We were really sad that we couldn't go over more in this workshop. Right now the last thing is just that everything is very static, and we go over some more complex things like the final pieces in our course, how do you actually connect this to the internet? How do you get more data from a backend, a database, etc. So again, if you're interested, please, applications go out very soon. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucy and Mathew. You guys have been awesome. And Lucy, props to you for coding the whole thing without, being able to build it. I thought that was incredibly impressive.
I'm nervous. I was like, oh my God, it's not working.
Well, you guys did a great job. And I think on behalf of everyone who's watching this on the live stream or also in the Zoom channel, thank you guys so much. And feel free to send more information about how to apply to the iOS development course for app dev on any of the channels. I think a lot of the people would be interested in that. So.
Yeah, one thing to quickly mention is on the iOS textbook where that link is for the workshop, I've added the final code, so you can definitely just download the zip if you don't have Git or something like that. And also just it's an application, but it's not an application. You're legit just submitting a Google form I'd like to take the course, and we'll send you a pin. So I really don't think there's nothing to sweat there.
Oh, okay, wait, hold on. I think somebody is asking me to share my screen, the extension. Okay, wait, hold on. I can just briefly do that because you're asking. Let me just. yeah, we don't reject anyone from our courses. I actually learned iOS from our courses. I actually learned iOS from watching our YouTube videos. So if you want to, everything is like uploaded. So if you have some free time this winter or semester, yeah. So I think the extension you're asking about is this, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Han, for organizing everything. I know you've had a long day. Thanks and to all the other Hacker Campus organizers.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. All right, take care.
All right, goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks again.